Elias Carrington had money, power, and a name that commanded respect, but one drunken comment caught on camera set fire to his empire and led him to Dr. Immani Brooks, the one woman who could either destroy him or save his soul. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. Elias Carrington stood at the window of his corner office, staring down at the busy streets of Manhattan. At 30 years old, he had everything money could buy: designer suits, luxury cars, and a last name that opened every door in town. "Mr. Carrington, your father is on line 1, his assistant called through the intercom. Elias sighed. His father never called with good news. "Put him through." "Son, don't forget the charity gala tonight. The Prestons will be there. Their daughter Caroline just moved back from Paris. She'd make a suitable match." "I'll be there," Elias said flatly. Another blonde socialite from the Wright family. It was always the same story. That night, Elias arrived at the Carrington Hotel ballroom in his tuxedo. The room glittered with chandeliers and old money. His father, William Carrington, waved him over to a group of men. "There he is, the future of Carrington International," William announced proudly. The men were board members and investors, all holding whiskey glasses and cigars. They welcomed Elias with firm handshakes and knowing smiles. Hours later, after the gala ended, they moved to the private boardroom for their monthly poker game. The whiskey flowed freely. Conversation drifted from business to women to politics. "My daughter's dating that new actor. You know the one. He's half Asian," said Robert Preston with a grimace. "At least she's not dating a black man," laughed another board member. Elias should have said something. He should have changed the subject. Instead, the alcohol loosened his tongue, and he repeated the words he'd heard all his life at dinner parties and country clubs. "I'd sleep with a black woman, sure, but I'd never have kids with one. That's just different." The room erupted in laughter. Elias didn't notice when one of the younger board members discreetly slipped his phone back into his pocket. 2 days later, Elias was in a meeting when his assistant burst in, face pale. "Sir, you need to see this." She handed him her tablet. There he was on screen saying those terrible words. The video had gone viral. His name was trending. "Cancel Carrington" was everywhere. "Get PR on the phone, now," he shouted. But it was too late. Within hours, 3 major sponsors pulled out of their deals. The charity foundation he chaired asked him to step down. His father summoned him to his office. "You've humiliated the Carrington name," William said coldly. "Fix this or I'll find someone who can." Elias sat in his office the next morning, scrolling through endless hate messages. His PR team suggested a quick apology and a large donation to a civil rights organization. "There's something else," his assistant said nervously. "The Plantation Resort project in Georgia. We hired a consultant months ago for the Black Heritage exhibit, Dr. Immani Brooks from Columbia. She's requested a meeting to discuss her position on the project given recent events." Elias rubbed his temples. "Fine. Set it up." The following day, Elias waited in the boardroom rehearsing his damage control speech. The door opened and he looked up. His words died in his throat. Immani Brooks walked in, wearing a perfectly tailored beige suit. Her dark skin seemed to glow under the harsh fluorescent lights. Her hair was styled in a crown of soft twists, but it was her eyes that stopped him cold, intelligent, fierce, and completely unimpressed by him or his wealth. "Dr. Brooks," he managed to say, extending his hand. She looked at it for a moment before shaking it briefly. "Mr. Carrington, please, have a seat. Would you like coffee? Water?" "No, thank you. I'd prefer to keep this brief." Elias cleared his throat. "About the video. I'm not here to discuss your personal views, Mr. Carrington," Immani cut in. "I'm here to determine whether I can, in good conscience, continue with this project. The company values... Your company hired me to design a historically accurate Black Heritage exhibit at a former plantation your family converted into a resort," she said, her voice calm but direct. "And now I find myself in the uncomfortable position of working with someone who publicly stated he wouldn't have children with a black woman." Elias felt his face grow hot. "Those weren't my words." "I mean, they were, but I was drunk and—" "You say you wouldn't have children with a black woman," Immani continued, looking him directly in the eyes. "But you expect black women to save your legacy, quietly, behind the scenes." The words hit him like a physical blow. "The exhibit is important," she said, "not for your company's image, but for the truth, for healing, for the ancestors who worked that land." "What do you want?" Elias asked. "Complete creative control. A budget increase of 30%. And I work directly with you, no middlemen, no PR filters. Why would you want to work with me? Immani gathered her papers. Because this exhibit matters more than your ignorance, and because people like you need to be uncomfortable for change to happen. Elias should have been angry. He should have shown her the door. Instead, he heard himself say, "Agreed. Good. I'll send over the revised contract today. We start site visits next week." She stood to leave. "Dr. Brooks," Elias called after her. "I'm sorry." She paused at the door. "Your apology means nothing to me, Mr. Carrington. Your actions might." After she left, Elias sat alone in the boardroom, feeling something he rarely experienced: shame. His phone buzzed with a message from his father. "The board is meeting tomorrow. Your position is in jeopardy." For the first time in his life, Elias didn't care what his father thought. The following week, Elias met Immani at the Georgia property. The former plantation had been in the Carrington portfolio for decades, renovated into a luxury resort while whitewashing its brutal history. "This is where the slave quarters stood," Immani said, pointing to an area now occupied by tennis courts, "and this path led to the fields." Elias followed her through the property, seeing it through new eyes. His family had erased the painful past and replaced it with luxury amenities for wealthy guests. "The exhibit will be housed here," Immani said, showing him the blueprints. "We'll restore the original structure and create an immersive experience. Visitors will learn about the families who lived and died here." "My father won't like this," Elias said. "Is that a problem?" He thought about his father's cold eyes, about the board meeting where they'd questioned his judgment, about a lifetime of nodding along to racist jokes. "No," he said firmly, "it's not a problem." Over the next few weeks, Elias and Immani worked closely on the project. She challenged everything: his language, his assumptions, the sanitized history his family had created. "Why do you call it a historic property instead of a plantation?" she asked during one meeting. "That sounds better in the brochures," he admitted. Better for whom? These conversations made him uncomfortable, but he found himself looking forward to their meetings. Immani was brilliant, passionate, and completely unafraid to speak her mind. One afternoon, as they reviewed architectural plans, Elias received a call from his father. "The Preston girl is in town. I've arranged dinner tonight." "I can't. I'm working on the Georgia project." "With that woman? The one from the university?" His father's voice dripped with disdain. "End this nonsense, Elias. You've made your gesture. Now it's time to move on. Her name is Dr. Brooks, and the project continues. You're risking everything, your position, your inheritance, for what? To ease your guilt." Elias looked across the table at Immani, who was pretending not to listen. "I'll take that risk," he said, and hung up. That evening they worked late. Elias ordered dinner to the office, and they ate while discussing the exhibit. "Why do you stay with the company?" Immani asked suddenly. "You could do anything with your money and privilege." Elias considered the question. "It's all I've ever known. The Carrington name, the legacy, it's who I am." "Is it? Or is it who they told you to be?" He had no answer. As weeks turned into months, Elias found himself changing. He spoke up when investors made casual racist remarks. He pushed for diversity in hiring, and he couldn't stop thinking about Immani, her mind, her strength, her unwillingness to be intimidated by wealth or status. But he knew better than to mistake professional respect for personal interest. She was working with him despite who he was, not because of it. The project moved forward. The exhibit was taking shape, but behind the scenes, trouble was brewing. Elias's father called an emergency board meeting. "This Georgia project is a publicity stunt gone too far," William argued. "My son is being influenced by outside forces." The board voted to pause the project pending review. When Elias told Immani, she wasn't surprised. "They were never going to let this happen," she said quietly. "I'll fix this," Elias promised. That night he received a strange call from his assistant. "Sir, you should check social media. Dr. Brooks is trending." Elias's blood ran cold. Someone had leaked Immani's personal information online. Carrington supporters were attacking her, calling her an opportunist, making threats. Photos of her home appeared in message boards. When she didn't show up for their meeting the next day, Elias tried calling. No answer. He drove to her apartment building in a panic. She opened the door on the third knock, eyes red from crying. "Go away, Elias. Are you okay? I saw what happened online. Did you think your family wouldn't fight back? Did you think they'd just let me change things? I didn't know, I swear." She laughed bitterly. "That's the problem. You never had to know. You could just exist in your bubble of privilege while people like me deal with the consequences. Let me help, he pleaded. How? With money, with a press release. This is my life, Elias, my safety, my career. He stood there, helpless, facing the reality of his family's power and cruelty. And something inside him broke. You were never the problem, Immani, he said quietly. I was. I am. But I swear to you, I'm done living under the weight of their sickness, and I'll burn it all down before I let them touch you again. She stared at him, seeing something new in his eyes. Resolve, regret, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. What are you going to do? She asked. What I should have done a long time ago. The next morning, Elias called a press conference without consulting his PR team or his father. News cameras gathered, expecting the standard corporate apology. Instead, they got the truth. My name is Elias Carrington, he began, looking directly into the cameras, and I was raised to believe things that dehumanize people who look like Dr. Immani Brooks. I repeated those beliefs. I was wrong. The reporters fell silent. The words in that video were mine. The ignorance was mine. And the only redemption I'll ever have is through action, not apology. He took a deep breath. Effective immediately, I am stepping down as COO of Carrington International until the company completes a full equity audit and returns land to black families the company profited from historically. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Additionally, I'm establishing an independent cultural equity board with Dr. Brooks as chairperson, if she accepts. As he walked away from the podium, ignoring the shouted questions, Elias knew his life would never be the same, and for the first time, that thought didn't scare him at all. Elias Carrington's phone wouldn't stop ringing. After his press conference, everyone wanted a piece of him. Reporters, former business partners, and angry board members. He ignored them all and drove straight to his penthouse apartment. He had just poured himself a drink when the elevator opened. His father stormed in, face red with fury. "Have you lost your mind?" William Carrington shouted. "You've thrown away generations of work in 5 minutes." Elias took a calm sip of his whiskey. "Hello to you too, father. This isn't a joke, Elias. The board is in chaos. Our stock dropped 15 points after your little stunt. Your grandfather would be ashamed." "My grandfather?" Elias laughed bitterly. "The man who built resorts on land he practically stole from black families. Maybe he should be ashamed." William pointed a trembling finger at Elias. "You think you're so righteous now. This woman has filled your head with nonsense. Her name is Dr. Brooks, and she didn't fill my head with anything. She just helped me see what was already there. I've called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow. We're voting to remove you completely." Elias nodded. "I expected that. And I'm freezing your trust fund." That he hadn't expected. Elias felt his stomach drop. He'd never lived without the Carrington fortune backing him up. "Do what you have to do," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. After his father left, Elias sat alone in his enormous apartment, wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake. Then his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Immani. We need to talk." 20 minutes later, he was knocking on her apartment door again. She opened it, looking tired but composed. "I saw your press conference. Can I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. Her apartment was small but filled with books, art, and photographs. It felt more like a home than any place Elias had ever lived. "Why did you do it?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Because it was the right thing to do." "The right thing for who? For your image? For your conscience?" Elias sighed. "For the company. For the people we've hurt. And yes, for me too." Immani studied his face. "And what happens now? You make this grand gesture, everyone applauds your growth, and everything goes back to normal?" "Nothing's going back to normal. My father just cut me off. The board is voting me out tomorrow." She looked surprised. "And you're okay with that?" "No," he admitted. "I'm terrified. I've never been without money or the Carrington name behind me. But I meant what I said about the audit and returning the land." Immani sat down on her sofa. "And the position you offered me? The offer stands if you want it. The board can't touch that. I set up a separate foundation before the press conference, funded with my personal money." "Why me?" Elias sat across from her. "Because you're the only person I trust to do it right." They talked for hours about the exhibit, the audit, and the foundation. As night fell, Immani ordered takeout, and they ate while discussing next steps. "You should come to the board meeting tomorrow," Elias said. "Show them we're serious." Immani shook her head. "That's your world, not mine. Besides, I have classes to teach." Elias nodded, feeling disappointed. "I understand. As he stood to leave, Immani said, "Elias, what you did today, it was brave." It was the first time she'd said his first name, and it made something warm spread through his chest. "Thank you," he said softly. The next morning, Elias walked into the Carrington International boardroom for what would likely be the last time. The faces around the table were grim. His father sat at the head, looking coldly triumphant. "Let's make this quick," William said. "We're voting on the removal of Elias Carrington from all positions within the company, effective immediately." "I'd like to say something first," Elias began. "I think you've said quite enough already," his father interrupted. "Actually," came a voice from the doorway, "I believe Mr. Carrington has the right to speak." All heads turned. Immani stood there, elegant in a dark blue suit, her expression professional and determined. "And who might you be?" William asked, though his tone suggested he knew exactly who she was. "Dr. Immani Brooks, Columbia University. I'm the consultant for the Georgia project." She walked into the room as if she owned it, taking the empty seat next to Elias. Under the table, she gave his hand a quick squeeze. "This is a closed meeting," William protested. "Dr. Brooks is here at my invitation," Elias said, finding his voice, "and she has valuable insight into the changes this company needs to make." For the next hour, Elias and Immani presented their plan for the company, the equity audit, the land restitution program, the heritage exhibit that would tell the true story of the plantation. Some board members looked intrigued, others uncomfortable. "This is all very touching," William said when they finished, "but Carrington International is a business, not a charity. We answer to shareholders, not to social justice warriors." "Actually," said Robert Chen, one of the younger board members, "our shareholders might disagree. I've spoken to several major investors who were impressed by Elias's press conference. They see it as leadership, not weakness." William's face darkened. "We're here to vote on Elias's removal, nothing more." "Before we vote," Immani said, standing up, "you should know that several civil rights organizations are watching this situation closely. They're prepared to launch a nationwide boycott of all Carrington properties if the company backslides on the commitments Elias made yesterday." The room fell silent. "That sounds like a threat, Dr. Brooks," William said. "It's not a threat. It's a reality." She gathered her papers. "I'll leave you to your vote." At the door, she turned back. "Mr. Carrington, the elder Mr. Carrington, I hope you understand that the world is changing. Companies that don't change with it get left behind." After she left, the board voted. To Elias's shock, the vote was split. Not enough to remove him completely. "This isn't over," his father warned as the meeting adjourned. Elias found Immani waiting in the lobby. "You came," he said, unable to hide his smile. "Someone had to save you from yourself." But she was smiling too. "How did you know what to say about the boycott?" "I didn't, but I do have friends in those organizations, and your father doesn't know that." Elias laughed. "You're something else, Dr. Brooks." "So, I've been told, Mr. Carrington." Over the next few weeks, Elias and Immani worked tirelessly on the Georgia project. With his position in the company hanging by a thread, Elias threw himself into the work. He learned about the families who had been enslaved on the plantation, about their descendants who still lived in the area. "We should invite them to be part of the planning," Elias suggested during one of their meetings. Immani looked at him with surprise. "That's actually a good idea. Don't sound so shocked," he teased. They organized a community meeting in the small Georgia town near the resort. Descendants of the enslaved families shared stories passed down through generations. Elias listened, really listened, for the first time in his life. Afterward, an elderly woman approached him. "You're different from your daddy and granddaddy," she said, studying his face. "They never would have sat and listened to us." "I'm trying to be better," Elias said honestly. "Well, trying counts for something." As they worked together day after day, something shifted between Elias and Immani. The walls she had built began to lower, just a little. She laughed at his jokes. He found excuses to extend their meetings. One evening, as they reviewed documents in his temporary office, he'd moved out of the executive suite after the board meeting, Elias found himself watching Immani instead of reading. "You're staring," she said without looking up. "Sorry." He quickly looked down at his papers. Immani sighed and put down her pen. "Elias, we need to talk about this." "About what?" "This tension between us. It's not appropriate." Elias felt his face grow warm. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You haven't, but I need to be clear. I'm here to do a job, not to be your redemption story." "Is that what you think this is?" "Isn't it? The privileged white man learns the error of his ways and falls for the black woman who taught him better. It's a cliché. Elias sat back, stung by her words. That's not fair. What you feel doesn't matter right now, Immani said firmly. What matters is the work. If we're going to continue working together, we need boundaries. He nodded slowly. You're right, I'm sorry. They went back to their documents, the silence heavy between them. The next day, Elias received a call from his mother, Margaret Carrington, who had been noticeably absent during the scandal. Darling, we need to talk. Meet me for lunch? They met at her favorite restaurant, an exclusive place where the waiters knew exactly how she liked her martini. Your father is furious, she said after ordering. I know, but I've been thinking about what you said at that press conference. She took a sip of her drink. My grandmother, your great-grandmother, used to tell stories about the old days, not pleasant stories. Elias listened, surprised by this revelation. The point is, Margaret continued, maybe it's time for some honesty in this family. Your father won't see it that way, but I do. Are you saying you support what I'm doing? I'm saying I understand it, and I want you to know that your trust fund from my side of the family is still intact. Your father can't touch that money. Relief flooded through him. He wouldn't be completely broke after all. Thank you, Mother. Don't thank me yet. I've invited Dr. Brooks to the charity gala next week. Elias nearly choked on his water. You what? I want to meet this woman who's had such an impact on my son. Mother, that's not a good idea. Immani, Dr. Brooks, she's not comfortable in those circles. Margaret raised an eyebrow. You're on a first-name basis, I see. We work together. She smiled knowingly. Well, she's already accepted the invitation, so be a gentleman and offer to escort her. The idea of Immani at the Carrington Charity Gala made Elias nervous. It was an annual event, filled with exactly the kind of people who had shaped his old views, wealthy, privileged, and often casually racist. When he brought it up during their next meeting, Immani surprised him. I know about the invitation. Your mother called me directly. You don't have to go, Elias said quickly. Those events are just for show. Actually, I think it's perfect. If we're serious about changing the company's culture, we need to be visible. Besides, I've been writing about these spaces in my dissertation, the exclusive events where power and privilege are maintained. So you're going for research. She smiled slightly. Let's call it field work. Then, would you like me to escort you? As colleagues, of course, he added hastily. That would be appropriate, yes. The night of the gala arrived. Elias waited nervously in the lobby of Immani's building. When she emerged, he couldn't help but stare. She wore a floor-length gown in deep burgundy, her hair styled in an elegant updo. Simple gold earrings caught the light when she moved. You look beautiful, he said before he could stop himself. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. In the car, Immani seemed tense. I've never been to one of these before. Just remember, you're the smartest person in the room, and if anyone says anything offensive, I can handle myself, Elias. I know you can, but you shouldn't have to. The ballroom was filled with New York's elite. Heads turned when Elias entered with Immani on his arm. Whispers followed them across the room. His mother greeted them warmly, surprising Elias. Dr. Brooks, I'm so pleased you could join us. I've heard wonderful things about your work. Thank you for inviting me, Mrs. Carrington. As the evening progressed, Elias kept close to Immani, introducing her to the few people he genuinely respected. She handled herself with grace and intelligence, impressing even the most skeptical guests. Then his father appeared, clearly drunk and angry. So this is the woman who's turned my son against his own family, William said loudly. Elias stepped forward. Father, this isn't the place. No? Where is the place to discuss how you've betrayed everything we built? Immani touched Elias's arm. It's all right, Mr. Carrington. I understand you're upset, but your son is trying to do something important. Important? He's destroying our reputation. He's enhancing it, Immani replied calmly. Companies with strong ethical practices perform better financially. It's been proven, William sneered. And what would you know about business, Professor? I know that the world is watching how Carrington International handles this moment. Your son has shown leadership. You should be proud. People had gathered around them, watching the confrontation. William looked at the crowd, then back at Immani and Elias. You've made your choice, he said to his son before walking away. Elias let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. I'm sorry about that. Don't be, Immani said, surprising him by taking his hand. Some people can't change, but you did. The simple touch of her hand in his sent warmth spreading through his body. As the evening wound down, Elias drove Immani home. They sat in comfortable silence, both processing the events of the night. Outside her building, he walked her to her door. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said. "You were amazing." "It was interesting," she admitted. "Your mother is not what I expected. She's full of surprises lately." They stood at her door, neither wanting the evening to end. "Immani," Elias began, then stopped. "I know you said we need boundaries, and I respect that, but I can't stop thinking about you." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Elias, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know that this isn't about redemption for me. It's about you. Just you." He turned to leave, but she caught his arm. "Wait." Elias looked back, heart pounding. "I can't deny there's something between us," Immani said softly. "But it's complicated. My career, your family, our work together. I know. I need time." Elias nodded. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." As he walked back to his car, Elias felt lighter than he had in months. She hadn't said no. It wasn't much, but it was something. His phone buzzed with a text from Robert Chen, the board member who had supported him. "Emergency meeting called for tomorrow. Your father is making a move. Be prepared." The brief moment of happiness faded. The fight for Carrington International and for his own future was far from over. Elias barely slept that night. Robert Chen's warning about the emergency board meeting kept him tossing and turning. By morning he was exhausted but determined. He would not let his father destroy everything he was trying to build. He arrived at Carrington headquarters early, surprised to find Robert waiting for him in the lobby. "Your father's been busy," Robert said, walking with Elias to the elevator. "He's been calling board members all night, making promises, threats, whatever it takes to get them to vote you out completely." "Does he have enough support?" Elias asked. "It's close. That's why I called you early. We need a strategy." In Robert's office, they went over the numbers. William needed a 2/3 majority to remove Elias from the board entirely. They counted the likely votes. It would come down to 2 or 3 people. "What about the land restitution program?" Elias asked. "Is there any way to protect it if I'm out?" Robert shook his head. "Your father will kill it immediately. He's already talking about getting back to business." Elias checked his watch. "The meeting's in an hour. I need to make some calls." He tried Immani first, but she didn't answer. She was probably teaching her morning class. He left a message explaining the situation, then called his mother. "I already know about the meeting," Margaret said. "Your father didn't come home last night. He's on a rampage." "Can you help?" Elias asked. "I'm still a shareholder, darling. I'll be there." An hour later, the boardroom was tense. William sat at the head of the table, looking confident. When Elias walked in, his father didn't even glance his way. "Let's begin," William said once everyone was seated. "We're here to vote on the complete removal of Elias Carrington from the board of directors and all positions within Carrington International." "On what grounds?" Elias asked. "Conduct detrimental to the company," William replied coldly. "Your reckless press conference and your so-called equity programs have damaged our reputation and our bottom line." "Actually," Robert interrupted, "our stock has recovered since the initial drop, and we've seen a 15% increase in bookings at our hotels from younger demographics." William waved this away. "Temporary. The real damage is to our long-term relationships with investors who expect stability, not social experiments." The boardroom door opened, and Margaret Carrington walked in. She took a seat next to Elias. "Margaret, this isn't your concern," William said tersely. "I hold 20% of the company shares, William. That makes it very much my concern." The discussion grew heated. Board members asked questions about the Georgia project, the equity audit, and the financial implications. Elias answered honestly, making his case for a new direction for the company. "Times are changing," he argued. "Companies that ignore their historical responsibilities get left behind. We have a chance to lead here, not follow." "Sentimental nonsense," William scoffed. "The purpose of a company is to make money, not right historical wrongs." "We can do both," came a voice from the doorway. All heads turned. Immani stood there, composed and professional. "Dr. Brooks," William said with undisguised contempt. "This is a private board meeting. I invited her," Elias said, standing. "Dr. Brooks has data on the financial benefits of corporate responsibility programs." Immani walked to the front of the room and connected her laptop to the projector. For the next 20 minutes, she presented case studies of companies that had improved their profits after addressing historical wrongs. "In conclusion," she said, looking directly at William, "companies that embrace ethical practices outperform their competitors by an average of 12% over 5 years. "This is all very nice," William said dismissively, "but we need to vote." Before we do, Margaret interjected, I'd like to remind everyone that my shares, combined with Elias's, represent 30% of the company. If Elias is removed today, we will consider selling our shares to outside investors who share our vision. A murmur ran through the room. The threat of a massive stock sell-off and potential outside takeover was serious. William glared at his wife. You wouldn't dare. Try me, Margaret replied calmly. After a tense silence, William called for the vote. Elias held his breath as each board member voted. When the final count came in, he had survived by a single vote. William stood abruptly. This meeting is adjourned. He stormed out without looking at his son. Elias let out a long breath. Thank you, he said to his mother. I didn't know you had that in you. Margaret squeezed his hand. Neither did I. But I'm proud of you, Elias. It's about time someone in this family stood up for what's right. As the board members filed out, Elias approached Immani. You came. Again. Your message sounded urgent, and I had the data ready anyway. You're making a habit of saving me. She smiled slightly. Don't get used to it. Outside the boardroom, Robert caught up with them. That was close. Your father won't give up, you know. I know, Elias sighed. But we bought some time. Use it wisely, Robert advised. The Georgia project needs to be a success. Over the next few weeks, Elias and Immani threw themselves into the work. The heritage exhibit was taking shape, with input from local community members and descendants of the enslaved families. The equity audit was underway, revealing uncomfortable truths about the company's hiring practices and land acquisitions. Elias's relationship with Immani remained professional but warm. They worked late nights together, shared meals, and gradually became something like friends. He respected her request for time and kept his feelings to himself, though they grew stronger each day. One evening, as they walked through the partially constructed exhibit space in Georgia, Immani seemed quieter than usual. Is something wrong? Elias asked. She hesitated. I received a job offer from Howard University, a full professorship. Elias felt his heart sink. That's wonderful. Congratulations. I haven't accepted yet, but it's a great opportunity. When would you start? Next semester. I'd have to leave the project before completion. Elias nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. You should take it. You deserve it. I'm torn, Immani admitted. This project means a lot to me, and working with you has been unexpected. Their eyes met, and Elias felt the familiar pull between them. Whatever you decide, he said softly, I'll support you. Back in New York, Elias received troubling news from the audit team. Several Carrington properties, including the Georgia resort, had been acquired through questionable means. The original black landowners had been pressured to sell, sometimes through intimidation or legal manipulation. We need to make this right, Elias told the team. Find the descendants. We'll offer compensation or return the land, whatever they prefer. When he shared this decision with Immani, she looked at him with genuine respect. That's a big step. It's the right thing to do. Your father will fight it. Let him try. He didn't have to wait long. William called an executive meeting the next day, excluding Elias, but Robert was there and filled him in afterward. Your father is planning to sell the Georgia property before the audit is complete. He's found a buyer who will close quickly. Elias was stunned. He can't do that. The board approved the audit. He's arguing that it's a business decision, not related to the audit, and he has enough executive support to push it through. Elias tried to get an emergency injunction, but the company lawyers, loyal to his father, stonewalled him. The sale was proceeding rapidly. When he told Immani, she was furious. This is exactly what I was afraid of. He's erasing the evidence. I won't let him, Elias promised. I'll buy the property myself if I have to. With what money? He cut you off, remember? Elias paced her office. My mother's trust fund. It's not enough for the whole property, but maybe enough for a down payment. I could get investors for the rest. In 2 days, that's when the sale closes. Elias made frantic calls to potential investors, but most weren't willing to move that quickly. By the evening before the sale, he was losing hope. That night, Immani showed up at his apartment with a bottle of wine and takeout. I thought you could use dinner, she said, and company. They ate on his balcony, talking about anything but the impending sale. For a few hours, they were just a man and a woman enjoying each other's company. I've decided about the job, Immani said as they finished the wine. Elias braced himself. And? I'm turning it down, for now. This project needs to be finished right. Relief and gratitude washed over him. Are you sure? It's a great opportunity. There will be others. This matters more. She looked at him. You matter more. The words hung between them. Elias leaned forward slightly. Immani. Her phone rang, breaking the moment. She checked it and frowned. It's my department head, I should take this. While she talked, Elias cleared the dinner plates, his mind racing. Had she just admitted she had feelings for him too? Immani ended her call looking troubled. That was strange. Someone's been asking questions about me at the university, about my relationship with you. What kind of questions? Personal ones. Inappropriate ones. Elias felt a chill. My father. Why would he care about my personal life? Because he knows I care about you, he's looking for leverage. The next morning, Elias woke to urgent messages from Robert. The sale of the Georgia property had been moved up. It was happening that day. Elias rushed to the office, but security stopped him in the lobby. I'm sorry, Mr. Carrington. We have orders not to let you upstairs today. He called Robert, who met him at a coffee shop across the street. It's worse than we thought, Robert said. Your father found a shell company to buy the property. Once the sale is complete, they'll demolish the original structures, including the ones for the exhibit. He's destroying the evidence, Elias realized, and killing our project at the same time. The papers are being signed at 11. There's nothing we can do. Elias checked his watch. It was 9:30. There has to be something. He called Immani, who was already on her way to the office. Meet me at my mother's place instead, he told her. I have an idea. Margaret Carrington lived in a spacious Park Avenue apartment filled with antiques and family heirlooms. She greeted Elias and Immani warmly. Mother, do you still have grandmother's papers? The ones you mentioned at lunch? Margaret looked confused. Yes, they're in the study. Why? I need to see them now. While Margaret went to find the papers, Elias explained to Immani. My great-grandmother kept journals. If she wrote about the Georgia property, about how it was acquired, it could be evidence, Immani finished. Margaret returned with a box of leather-bound journals. Eleanor was quite the record keeper. She documented everything the family did, good and bad. They searched frantically through the journals, looking for mentions of the Georgia plantation. Finally, Immani found it. Here, April 1952. William Sr. has acquired the Johnson property in Georgia. The methods were unsavory, but he assures me it was all legal. The poor colored family had no choice but to sell after the incidents. Elias read further. She describes how my grandfather arranged for the Johnson family to be harassed, their crops destroyed, until they were desperate enough to sell for a fraction of the land's value. This is exactly what the audit was finding, Immani said. Documented by your own family. Elias checked the time. 10:20. We need to get to the office. Now. They won't let you in, remember? Immani pointed out. They'll let my mother in. Margaret Carrington strode into Carrington International like she owned it, which, in part, she did. Security didn't dare stop her. Elias and Immani followed in her wake. They reached the executive floor just as the signing meeting was beginning. William looked up in shock as they entered the boardroom. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. Margaret stepped forward. This meeting is over, William. You have no authority here, Margaret. Perhaps not, she replied calmly, but I do have these. She placed the journals on the table. Eleanor's records of how the family really acquired the Georgia property, and others. William's face paled. Those are private family matters. Not anymore, Elias said. Not if you go through with this sale. The potential buyer, a nervous-looking man in an expensive suit, stood up. Is there a problem with the property? No problem at all, William said quickly. Actually, Immani interjected, there's evidence that the land was illegally obtained from its rightful owners through harassment and intimidation. That could cloud the title significantly. I wasn't informed of this, the buyer said, gathering his papers. I think we need to postpone this transaction pending further review. Sit down, William ordered. The sale proceeds as planned. I'm afraid not, came another voice. Robert Chen entered with two men in suits. These gentlemen are from the State Attorney General's office. They're interested in these allegations of fraud and intimidation. The room erupted in chaos. The buyer left quickly. The officials began asking questions. William glared at his son with pure hatred. You've destroyed everything, he hissed. No, father. I'm fixing what was destroyed long ago. In the aftermath, the sale was halted pending investigation. The audit would continue and the Georgia project was safe for now. But the war within Carrington International was far from over. That evening, Elias and Immani celebrated their small victory with dinner at her apartment. Your mother was amazing today, Immani said, raising her glass in a toast. She surprised me too. I never knew she had that kind of strength. She reminds me of my grandmother. Quiet strength that shows up when it's needed most. They settled on her sofa with coffee after dinner. For the first time in weeks, they could relax. "About what you said last night," Elias began hesitantly. "About me mattering to you." Immani looked down at her cup. "I meant it. I've respected your boundaries, Immani. I've tried to give you the time you asked for. But I need to know, is there a chance for us?" She was quiet for a long moment. "When we first met, I saw you as everything wrong with the world. Privileged, entitled, blind to your own prejudice." Elias winced but didn't interrupt. "But you changed. Not because it was convenient or because you wanted something from me. You changed because it was right." She looked up at him. "That matters to me. You matter to me." Elias moved closer, taking her hand. "I'm not perfect. I'm still learning, still making mistakes." "I don't need perfect," Immani said softly. "I just need real." Their lips met in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened. Elias pulled her closer, his heart pounding as she responded with equal passion. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Immani rested her forehead against his. "This complicates everything, you know." "I know, but some complications are worth it." The next morning, Elias woke in Immani's bed, watching her sleep beside him. He couldn't remember ever feeling this content, this right. His phone buzzed with a text. He checked it carefully, not wanting to wake her. It was from Robert. "Turn on the news now." Elias slipped out of bed and into the living room, finding the remote. He turned on the TV, keeping the volume low. A reporter stood outside Carrington headquarters. "Breaking news this morning as William Carrington, CEO of Carrington International, has announced a major restructuring of the company. In a surprise move, he's spinning off the hotel division into a separate company under his direct control, leaving the rest of Carrington International behind. Sources say this move effectively removes the most valuable assets from the company before the completion of the controversial equity audit his son Elias had initiated." Elias felt the blood drain from his face. His father had outmaneuvered them all. "Elias." Immani stood in the doorway, wrapped in a robe. "What's wrong?" He pointed to the TV where William Carrington was now speaking at a press conference. "This restructuring allows us to focus on what we do best, providing world-class hospitality. The new company, Carrington Legacy Hotels, will honor our traditions of excellence while looking to the future." "He's taking the hotels," Elias said numbly, "the most profitable part of the business, and the Georgia property will go with them." "Can he do that?" "With enough board support, yes." "And he must have secured it overnight." Immani sat beside him, taking his hand. "What does this mean for the project, for the audit?" "It means we're back to square one," Elias said, the weight of defeat heavy on his shoulders. "He's stripped away everything we were fighting for." His phone rang, Robert again. "It's worse than it looks on TV," he said when Elias answered. "Your father has been planning this for weeks. He's got investors, a new board, everything. What about our board members? The ones who supported us? They were bought off or threatened. Even your mother's shares won't matter in the new structure." After hanging up, Elias explained the situation to Immani. "I'm sorry. All our work, everything we've done." To his surprise, Immani didn't look defeated. She looked determined. "This isn't over," she said firmly. "Your father thinks he's won, but he's just shown his hand." "What do you mean?" "He's desperate. He wouldn't take such a drastic step unless he was truly afraid of what the audit would find." She squeezed his hand. "We hit a nerve, Elias, and now we know exactly where to push." Elias looked at her, drawing strength from her resolve. "So what do? We fight back, but not his way, our way, with truth." As they sat together planning their next move, Elias realized something important. He might have lost the company his ancestors built, but he'd found something more valuable, his own voice, his own purpose. And Immani, the battle for Carrington's soul, had just begun. But for the first time, Elias truly believed they could win. Elias and Immani spent the morning making calls. The news of William Carrington's company split was everywhere, with business analysts praising his bold strategic move. Only a few questioned the timing and real motivation behind it. "He's controlling the narrative," Immani said as they watched another favorable news segment about William. "We need to change that." Elias nodded, scrolling through emails on his phone. "Robert says the paperwork for the split is being rushed through. My father wants it finalized by the end of the week. That's too fast. There has to be a legal way to slow this down." They were interrupted by a knock at Immani's door. When she opened it, a courier handed her an envelope. "Special delivery for Dr. Brooks." Immani opened it and pulled out a letter. As she read, her expression darkened. "What is it?" Elias asked. She handed him the letter. It was from Columbia University's dean, informing her that an anonymous donor had raised concerns about her extracurricular activities and possible conflicts of interest regarding her work with Carrington International. The university was launching a review of her position. "This is my father," Elias said, his voice tight with anger. "He's trying to pressure you." "He's threatening my career," Immani said quietly. "My reputation." Elias took her hands. "I won't let him get away with this, I promise." But Immani pulled away. "This is exactly what I was afraid of, Elias. Getting involved with you, with your family's business. It's put everything I've worked for at risk. Immani, I need some time. Alone." Her voice was firm, but shaking. "Please." Reluctantly, Elias left. He spent the day at his apartment, alternating between fury at his father and fear of losing Immani. By evening he had a plan, or at least the beginning of one. He called Robert. "I need everything you have on the Georgia property. All the files from the audit, all the records about how it was acquired. Your father's removed those from the company servers." "Of course he has. But I know you, Robert. You keep backups." Robert paused. "Come to my place in an hour." Next, Elias called his mother. "Do you still have Grandmother Eleanor's journals?" "Yes, why?" "Don't let them out of your sight. Father may try to get them." Finally, he tried calling Immani again. She didn't answer. He left a message. "I understand you need space, but please know I'm fighting for us, for all of this. I won't let him win." At Robert's apartment, Elias went through folders of documents. The audit had uncovered more than he'd realized. A pattern of land acquisitions from black families across the South, all under suspicious circumstances. "There's a clear pattern," Robert said. "From the 1940s through the 1970s, Carrington International, or rather your grandfather, specifically targeted black-owned properties. Once acquired, they were developed into hotels or resorts with no acknowledgement of their history." Elias shook his head. "And now my father's trying to hide it all over again." "Exactly. The new company structure lets him bury these properties under layers of subsidiaries." Elias continued reading through the night. By morning, he had a clearer picture and a stronger resolve. He tried Immani again. This time she answered. "Can we meet?" he asked. "I have something important to show you." They met at a quiet cafe. Immani looked tired, her eyes shadowed with worry. "How are you?" Elias asked gently. "The university has put me on administrative leave while they conduct their review." Her voice was flat. 20 years of work, and it can all be taken away because of an anonymous complaint. "I'm so sorry, Immani. This is all my fault." She shook her head. "No, it's your father's fault. There's a difference." Elias placed a folder on the table. "I went through the audit files with Robert. It's worse than we thought. My grandfather targeted dozens of black-owned properties, not just the one in Georgia." Immani looked through the documents, her professional interest overcoming her personal distress. "This is systematic, deliberate." "Yes, and now my father is trying to hide it by restructuring the company." Elias leaned forward. "But what if we don't let him?" "What do you mean? What if we take this public? All of it? The audit findings, my grandmother's journals, everything?" Immani looked uncertain. "That's a big step, Elias. It would destroy your family's reputation. Maybe it needs to be destroyed. Maybe we need to burn it all down and build something better from the ashes." They spent the next few days gathering evidence and planning. Elias contacted the descendants of the families who had lost their land. Many were surprised to hear from him, skeptical of his motives. But when he explained what he was trying to do, most agreed to share their stories. Immani worked with her colleagues at Columbia to document the historical significance of the properties. Despite being on leave, she threw herself into the research. "If I'm going to lose my career over this," she told Elias, "I might as well make it count." They worked separately but stayed in constant contact. The personal tension between them remained unresolved, but their shared purpose gave them focus. A week later, with William's company split nearly complete, Elias made his move. He called a press conference, not at Carrington headquarters but at the Georgia property itself. Journalists gathered on the grounds of the former plantation, curious about why Elias Carrington had summoned them to this remote location. Behind him stood a group of elderly black men and women, the descendants of those who had once owned or worked the land. 3 months ago, Elias began, I sat in a boardroom and said words that revealed the prejudice I'd been raised with. I said I would never have children with a black woman. Those words showed my ignorance, my blindness to my own privilege. Camera shutters clicked rapidly. Since then, I've been on a journey, a difficult one, to understand the true cost of that privilege. And what I've discovered is that my family's wealth, the Carrington name that opened every door for me, was built on stolen land and broken promises. He gestured to the people behind him. These are the descendants of the Johnson family, who owned this land until my grandfather used intimidation and fraud to take it from them in 1952. Their story is not unique. My family did the same thing to dozens of black families across the South. Elias held up Eleanor's journals. My own grandmother documented these tactics in her personal writings. She knew they were wrong, but she did nothing to stop them. A murmur ran through the crowd of reporters. Recently, my father, William Carrington, has attempted to hide this history by restructuring the company. He's spinning off the hotel division to protect these properties from scrutiny and restitution. He introduced Robert, who presented the audit findings. Then Immani stepped forward to provide historical context. The systematic theft of black-owned land in the 20th century is a documented historical fact, she explained. What makes the Carrington case unique is the scale and the detailed records that remain. One by one, family members shared their stories, how their grandparents or parents had been forced from their land, how opportunities and generational wealth had been stolen from them. The press conference lasted for hours. By the end, even the most skeptical reporters were shaken by the evidence. "What are you asking for?" one journalist finally asked. "Justice," Elias said simply. "I'm asking my father and the board of the new Carrington Legacy Hotels to acknowledge this history, to make restitution to these families, and to commit to a path of true reconciliation. And if they refuse?" Elias glanced at Robert, who nodded. "Then I will use every legal means at my disposal to ensure these families receive justice, including a class action lawsuit against the new company." The story exploded across news outlets and social media. Carrington Truth became a trending topic. Activists and celebrities picked up the cause. Competitors in the hotel industry distanced themselves from Carrington, fearing similar scrutiny. William Carrington issued a brief statement calling his son's claims exaggerated and taken out of context. But the evidence was too strong, the stories too compelling. The day after the press conference, Elias received a call from his mother. "Your father is furious," she said, sounding more tired than afraid. "He's threatening to write you out of his will completely." "I expected that," Elias replied. "He also fired half the board who he suspects of helping you." "How are you, Mother? Are you safe?" Margaret sighed. "I've moved in with my sister for now. It's for the best." After hanging up, Elias checked on Immani. She'd been quiet since the press conference, overwhelmed by the public attention. "The university called," she told him when he reached her. "They've suspended the review. Apparently some major donors have expressed support for my work." "That's great news." "It is. But Elias, this is just the beginning. Your father won't give up easily." She was right. The next day, William Carrington called a counter press conference. He appeared with several elderly white men, former business associates of his father's. "My son has chosen to smear his own family's name," William said, his voice tight with anger. "He's taken normal business transactions from decades ago and twisted them to fit a modern political agenda. But the damage was done. Major shareholders in the new Carrington Legacy Hotels began to express concern. Partners and investors distanced themselves. The stock price fell. 2 days later, Elias received a call from an unfamiliar number. "Is this Elias Carrington? This is James Preston from the board of Carrington Legacy Hotels." Preston had been one of his father's closest allies. "Yes, this is Elias. Your father has suffered a heart attack." Elias felt the world tilt. Despite everything, William was still his father. "Is he? He's stable, but the doctors say he needs rest. The board has asked him to step down temporarily." Preston paused. "We'd like to meet with you." The meeting took place at the hospital in a private conference room. 4 board members, including Preston, were waiting for Elias. "Let's be frank," Preston began. "This situation is damaging everyone. The company, your family, these families you're advocating for. We need a resolution." "I agree," Elias said. "What do you propose?" "A settlement. The company will establish a restitution fund for the affected families. We'll acknowledge the historical wrongs without admitting current liability, and we'll complete the heritage exhibit at the Georgia property." "And what do you want from me?" "Drop the lawsuit, stop the public campaign, and come back to the company as CEO." Elias was stunned. "You want me to replace my father?" "Temporarily, at least. The board feels you've demonstrated a certain moral leadership that might be valuable in the current climate." Elias asked for time to consider the offer. He needed to talk to Immani, to the families, to his lawyers. When he told Immani about the offer, she was skeptical. It could be a trap. They get you inside, silence you, and then continue business as usual. Or it could be a real opportunity for change, Elias countered. I could do more from inside than outside. What about us? Immani asked quietly. If you go back to that world, Elias took her hands. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Whatever I decide, I need to know where we stand. Immani looked down at their joined hands. When I first met you, I saw everything I despised. Privilege, arrogance, blind prejudice. Now I see a man willing to risk everything for what's right. She met his eyes. I love that man. Elias felt his heart soar. I love you too, more than I thought possible. But, she continued, I won't be a prop in your redemption story. If we're together, it has to be as equals, partners. Always, he promised. They sealed the promise with a kiss that felt like a new beginning. The next day, Elias met with the families affected by his grandfather's actions. He explained the board's offer and asked for their input. Mrs. Johnson, the eldest of the Georgia family descendants, spoke for many of them. We don't want to destroy the Carrington name, young man. We just want acknowledgement and respect. If you think you can do that from inside the company, we support you. Elias made his decision. He would accept the CEO position, but with conditions. The restitution fund would be substantial and independently managed. The equity audit would be completed and its findings made public. And Immani would be hired as a permanent consultant on historical and cultural matters. The board reluctantly agreed to his terms. 3 days later, Elias Carrington was named the interim CEO of Carrington Legacy Hotels. His first act was to visit his father in the hospital. William was pale but alert, his eyes cold as Elias entered the room. Come to gloat? William asked weakly. No, I came to tell you that I'll be running the company while you recover. William gave a bitter laugh. My own son. The ultimate betrayal. It wasn't betrayal, father, it was the truth. The truth, William scoffed. You've always been soft. Your grandfather would be ashamed. Elias sighed. Maybe, but I think Grandmother Eleanor would be proud. As he turned to leave, William called after him. She'll leave you, you know, that woman, once she gets what she wants from you. Elias looked back at his father with pity. That's the difference between us, father. I believe in people. You only believe in power. Over the next 6 months, Elias worked to transform Carrington Legacy Hotels. The restitution fund provided compensation to dozens of families. The Georgia Heritage exhibit opened to critical acclaim, with Immani as its chief curator. William recovered from his heart attack, but chose early retirement rather than returning to the company. He and Margaret formally separated, ending decades of a loveless marriage. Elias and Immani's relationship deepened, though they kept it private from the public eye. She continued teaching at Columbia while consulting for the company. He divided his time between New York and Georgia, overseeing the changes he'd promised. The night before the official opening of the Heritage exhibit, Elias and Immani walked through the completed space. Photos and artifacts told the story of the families who had lived and worked on the land. A wall of names honored those who had been enslaved there. Nothing was whitewashed or sanitized. It's beautiful, Elias said, taking in the exhibits. You've done something incredible here. We did, Immani corrected him. This wouldn't exist without you. They stopped before a display about the Johnson family, showing how they had acquired the land after emancipation, built a successful farm, and eventually lost it to the Carringtons. Do you ever regret it? Immani asked. Standing up to your father, risking everything. Elias thought about his old life, the meaningless relationships, the unearned privilege, the casual bigotry he'd once accepted without question. Not for a second, he said. Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me, even if it started with the worst thing I ever said. She smiled up at him. Those words you said that night, they don't define you anymore. No, he agreed. What defines me now are the actions I take to make things right, and the people I love. He squeezed her hand. Especially the people I love. The next day, hundreds gathered for the exhibit's opening. Descendants of the enslaved families stood alongside company executives and community members. Reporters captured the historic moment. Elias gave a brief speech, acknowledging the painful history and promising a better future. Then he introduced Immani, who spoke movingly about the importance of confronting the past honestly. As she finished her speech, Elias stepped forward again. There's one more thing I'd like to say today. He turned to face Immani, taking both her hands in his. A year ago I said words that revealed the worst parts of who I was raised to be, words about never having children with a black woman. Words I'll regret forever. The crowd grew quiet. Today, in front of all these witnesses, I want to say different words. He lowered himself to one knee. Immani Brooks, I love you more than I thought possible. You've changed my life, my heart, my whole world. Will you marry me? Immani's eyes filled with tears. For a moment she seemed unable to speak. Then, softly, yes. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers as Elias slid a ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her. Later, as they celebrated with friends and family, Mrs. Johnson approached them. My grandmother used to say that true healing can't happen without honest reckoning. You two have started something important here. We're just beginning, Immani assured her. And you'll have beautiful children, the older woman added with a knowing smile. Elias laughed. I hope so. That night, after the celebrations ended, Elias and Immani stood on the porch of the old plantation house, now transformed into a center for education and reconciliation. So, Immani said, looking up at him with a teasing smile, you still think you'd never have children with a black woman? Elias pulled her close, his heart full of love and hope for their future. Not a day goes by I don't wish I could be the father of yours. She kissed him then, under the stars that had witnessed generations of pain and struggle on this land, and now, finally, witnessed love and redemption. The words he'd once spoken in ignorance no longer defined him. What defined him now was the truth he'd fought for, the love he'd found, and the future they would build together, a future that would heal the past, not hide it, a future bright with possibility, a future they would create side by side, hand in hand. The end.